Everybody, and welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. This week, David Rabelais joins us, the Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. So, Dave, thanks so much for being with us, man. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good, man. I'm trying to stay dry today, but I tell everybody every time it rains, we get a little bit more water in the Houma Ave, so I don't complain. I don't get yelled at as much.
Hey, look, if you're hitting the bottom, that's not big. You got a little rain here, man.
You
should
hold
be able
off
to
for
go
a little while, yeah.
And look, just for fun fact, how much sway does a rainy season versus a drought season? This summer, I would imagine it got pretty low.
Yeah, I mean it goes by tides. You got your high and your low tide. It could be anything. Depends on how much rain you get and how long it rains. Right. I mean it's not going to last that long.
Every May, when the ice melts and everything comes down to Mississippi, we don't get higher.
We get a little high water level. Sometimes you can look outside. Sometimes, like today, you look outside and the water level's high and all the bayous and everything, and it's just but it goes down quick.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was that way. But more affected by tides than by
right, and I just say that because I can, because I get yelled at all the time when we don't have the water, So
I got you.
It's one thing I can kind of. Hang my hat on, Say, we got more water today than we had yesterday,
Exactly. So look, beautiful facility over there and got a lot going on always. So, H&C, the Bay, and the inland dredging. How are we doing?
So the inland dredging, like we reported last time, was completed last June, okay? And like that was the first time since the 18 years I've been port director that we ever dredged the inland reach. So that was good. And that tells you we don't get sediment coming north to south. Everything we dredge is in the bay. It's east to west in the bay. So, but yeah, the inland was all dredged and it's all 15 or better. So we good. We good on the inland part. And the bay was completed at the end of December, the fiscal year 23 bay dredging. And now, we focused on the 24 dredging. We got our budget and we going to wait until summertime and see what the depths are at the beginning of the summer. And if it warrants, we'll get an early dredge. If not, we'll wait till the latter part of the summer and the fall. And we'll do a dredge cycle then.
And for folks that have to navigate and do all that, all the agency surveys were done, and y'all posted all that, right?
Yeah, the Corps posts them online. You can go to our website, terrebonneport.com, and there's a link on our webpage that will bring you right to the cross sections, the latest cross sections. And you have to look at the date at the bottom. It's a series of plats or drawings, and you pull them up as you go down. And you have to look at the bottom, and it tells you what was the latest cross section or hydro that they did. And so the inland, they never really have to do that, but it's the bay that's very, very critical because it changes. I mean, you could get a south wind for a southeast wind or southwest wind, whatever, a couple days, and it could put a sandbar in the channel. Right. Okay, and so the weakest link. I mean the weakest area of the whole channel is the weakest link. So if you have a sandbar that's at 13-foot depth, and that's the depth of the bay, because you got to go through it. And when I say a sandbar, it may be a mile, a mile of silt that just falls in the channel. And it just depends on the direction of the wind and how much wind as to where it'll be.
Yeah. Now, you said always east to west that you're always having to deal with,
That's
right?
correct.
Now, if we went further west in the state, it might change and go the other direction?
Yeah,
like around the Chaffalaya?
Different areas are different. Like in Fouchon, they have there's a current that splits right at Fouchon. One of them goes west and one of them goes east. And Fouchon doesn't have nearly as much issues with their dredging every year as we have, because we're on the eastern side and we get the eastern.
It's always eastern.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. The Chaffalaya. They have a fluff that comes from the north and goes down the channel, and they have to deal with that every year. And it's a little harder because in some areas it's a fluff, some areas it's sand, but theirs comes from north to south. it's controlled by the Mississippi River or all the other bayous and
They're
tributaries.
building land down there.
Yeah, and at the mouth of like Wax Lake Outlet, they're actually building land. I mean, that's what the Mississippi River did.
Right.
It built Terrebonne, it built
Sure.
Lafourche, thousands of years ago, and that's how we became what we are. But once they levied the Mississippi off, and they restricted the sediment from, or restricted the water and sediment from coming out of it, it just goes straight out to the continental shelf. But once it gets in the Gulf, you get that push, and then so I still don't know exactly when and where and how we get our silt. I know it's coming from the east, but we would have to do cross sections like twice a month, every month, and that's very expensive. We can't afford that. The Corps comes in several times a year and they do their hydro, but I'm still working on, getting that at least for a year or two so that we can kind of determine, what's causing it, where's it coming from, and we can go back historically and look at all the old data and say, well, this is the same as it is this year back 5 years ago. Okay, so yeah, we did get a similar weather pattern, so that's the kind of things that we have to figure out, but it's expensive.
Right.
So.
Well, we had talked on past programs about possible, with the change in leadership and some of the coastal programs, rocks may be available right down the road. But if you don't know how to put the rocks and where to put them, and I think that's what you're talking about. If it's not just a standard thing from Grand Isle to Fouchon
Right.
to Terrebonne Parish to Chaffalon.
Everybody hates the word study, okay? Because the Corps wore it out. They would study things for years and years, okay? But no matter what you do, you have to review it and study it for a little while to determine what you're going to do. Right. I mean, you can't just go out there
doing it wrong.
Yeah, you can't go out there and just start doing stuff. So, so that's part of a study that I'd like to do, is to see where it comes in, when it comes in, but yeah, you're right. So we do have some leadership at the state level now with CPRA and Gordy Dove. He's the chairman. And they have all the BP oil spill money. They have any fines that are issued on a big scale, all go to CPRA, and they do a lot of good. But now that we got Gordy in there, the governor told him, said we need to protect the coast. So that's what he's going to do. He's going to start on the east side, and he's just going to go all the way across, and as much as he can get, he's going to rock the barrier islands the right way. Some of them you have to put the rocks perpendicular to the beach. Some of them you put them on the beach. It just depends on that study and monitoring the current and figuring out where's the best place to put it. So if you go to Grand Isle, you'll see them. They go perpendicular to the beach, and it actually builds land all the way around them. Yeah. So that's what we got to do.
Yeah, no doubt that has been a success story when you see, like I say, when you and I grew up on that eastern side of Grand Isle, the water was underneath the camps. Now you got to take a golf cart to get to the water. Right. It's grown so much.
Right.
And they've actually now got a second set of rocks out there because it's grown so much.
David Cormerdale, the mayor, is he hounds them. I mean, he's passionate about it, and he's always out there. He's always negotiating with the Corps, negotiating with Garrett and them, and he does a great job, and that's what's saved the island. I mean, the island would have disappeared if we hadn't. Barrier Islands are the only real estate in the country that it's moving. Mm-hmm. It's not stationary. So it erodes on one end and builds up on the other end, and so it's a science just to figure out exactly what to do and how to do it.
Right, and you're right. It's a living and breathing science because they move all over. And you can look at the chain from here, from Grand Isle, all the Chandeleurs all the way to Mississippi. They do move a lot.
Yeah.
And a hurricane will cut them in half sometimes.
Yes, that's true. And the hurricanes made them disappear.
Right.
So it's unfortunate, but that's what we have to deal with. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in all the plans that everybody's thought about, there is something that's going to work, and I think Gordy's got a good handle on it. So he's going to work with CPRA and their board, and he's going to get some stuff done that'll help us a lot. Now,
will that benefit what you do? And when you're talking about the Port Commission, is that symmetrical? Do we have the similar type objectives?
Well, we want a confidence in the channel depth. Okay, if we put out a map of the channel and we say it's 15 feet deep, 6 months from now we want it to still be 15 feet deep, but that's not the case now. So the oil and gas industry has learned to adapt to it. They know when to come in and when not to come in, and they plan all that stuff. But when you have like Thomas, he does the Corps of Engineers, they do NOAA, the Navy, the Coast Guard vessels. They repair and build all those kinds of vessels. So when those guys come in, they look at a chart, and when they get maybe a mile into the channel, and they say, well, it's getting shallow, and they leave. They don't understand it, and of course, and look, those vessels cost a lot of money.
Sure.
You've been rudders, you've been props, so if we like right now we're authorized to go 20 feet. Okay, as soon as we lower all the pipelines, and we'll get into that the next segment, we're authorized to dig it to 20 feet, and they always do an additional 2 feet, call it advanced maintenance. So we have a 22-foot channel, and I dream of the day where we get 22 feet and it stays 22 feet all year, and that's when you do that for 3 or 4 years, and your economy is going to be booming. I mean, and that's what we want, to keep our people working.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, that's what the port's all about.
Yeah,
and that's what the goal would be. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back with more Going Public right after this.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough. Alford and Associates, for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality. Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Welcome back to Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. David Ravelay is the Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. He is with us this week. So let's talk about the update on the HNC and the deepening process.
All right. Well, currently, yeah, there's 14 pipelines that cross 16 pipelines that cross the Houma Nav in the bay. And that's from the Gulf to mile 12 coming up. So it's at Cocotree. And then north of that, there's 40 or more that they've identified. So the crews out there on the northern part, they've already identified all the ones in the southern phase. And we've already contacted all the companies. And they've not only did they identify, locate them horizontally, but they also probed them to verify the depth, and then they meet with the Corps of Engineers, and the Corps stipulates whether or not you got to lower it or not. Okay, so the old law was you had to have 7 feet of cover. Okay, but recently they've changed it and they want 14 feet of cover, and some of them they're allowing us to grandfather into the old 7 foot. If we still have 7 foot of cover, they're allowing it. So the dredge doesn't come close to it, and so
yeah, obviously it's more expensive the deeper you go.
Right, and to lower or not lower is a big difference in cost.
Oh, sure.
Okay, I mean we dealing with one company right now in the bay, and we just got an estimate to lower the line of $15 million. Okay.
Gee.
So now
and it's just for the width of the bay of the
of the channel.
channel.
Yeah. So
So that would, what is it, 300 yard? How wide?
No, they're gonna. Well, I'm not sure whether that one's a directional drill or just coming in and cutting the pipe, putting a spool piece in that goes down. Like in other words, it goes like
Yeah,
this and
like
comes
a
down and
U,
goes back up. Yeah, I got to go back and look at it. That thought came to my mind. I'm not sure.
But
what it
how
was.
far would they have to go how far across?
I would say, at least 1,000 feet.
1,000, okay,
Yeah,
I
or
got you.
better, just to make sure they're out of the channel, because boats will get out of the channel.
And the channel moves.
Yeah, and you don't, and you don't want to, you want to have them. So anyway,
I got
so
you.
that's what we're dealing with. So now it's a negotiation with the company as to who pays. Okay, when was the line installed? This particular line, I think, was installed in the 50s. Okay, the Houma Nav wasn't there. All right, so they have more of a argument that, hey, why should we have to pay for it? But if it was installed after the channel was dug, and it needs to be relocated because of navigation, then there's less of an argument.
right.
But it's all going to be a negotiated thing. The state's paying for it, so we need to. So we're right at a point with one company that, we sent all the information to our lawyers. They have their lawyers, and so it's going to be one of those sit down at the table and hash it out, and who knows, and I'm gonna bring the state in, so they'll have somebody there since they got to pay for it. But we want to save as much money as
Sure.
we can,
Oh, that's it.
So we also currently preparing to meet with other pipeline companies. So we've sent them all letters, and so all of them know we coming, and they, we let them know we know they have a line, and this is the line we found, and so we pull the right-of-way agreements and the permits, and study those because they'll have information in that as to who pays for what, and and then we sit down and negotiate with them.
I think the nature of pipelines, they must deal with this all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, they just
this is not the only port they have to worry
no
about.
Mississippi. They
Right.
just deep in the Mississippi to 55 feet. So
Yeah, they have to deal
They
with
had
this.
a lot of that in Mississippi, but it's not as many pipelines crossing the Mississippi as there are in our area.
I see. So when we talk about Washington nowadays, you talking about you guys get grants, or
Yeah.
is that how it works? Bonds, or do you,
We apply for grants.
and the reason I ask this, money is more expensive nowadays because of the interest rates.
Yeah.
Right? So how does interest rates affect what you guys do and how your money comes in?
Well, basically, like let's say the BRIC grant, which is BRIC, and I don't remember what it stands for. We just recently applied for it, and there's it's they might have $5 billion that they're putting out nationwide. Okay, they might have $20 billion of requests. So what we did is we want to build that rock jetty adjacent to Timberlake Island. So we were told that we needed to keep it under 25 million. Okay, so we kind of backed into, well, we're gonna do a 1.5 mile section, and so we applied for the grant. So we applied for like $23 million. Okay, and we're just waiting now to see what happens, see if we get it or not. There's another one called the Port Infrastructure Development Program, the PIDP. Does almost the same thing as the BRIC grant. We applied for that one too. And then there's another one called RAISE, and I don't remember what that acronym stands for, but we applied for the same thing with that one. So out of three of them, and they're very, very, very difficult to get. They're very hard to get because there's, like I said, there's 20 billion of ask, and there's only 5 billion of the
Sure.
take. So it's political, but we have a lobbyist up in Washington, and we just do the best we can. That's all we can do.
But you don't have to borrow the money to do things.
No.
So
not-
that's what
not
I'm
for
saying. The
that.
interest rates doesn't really.
And there's other grants, like the state has grants, like Port Priority. That's to build infrastructure in the port. But there's a waiting list to get that money. Okay, so let's say we apply for 15 million in Port Priority, but there's a waiting list. But we have a tenant that's ready to go. So we go to the bank and we borrow, I call it a bridge loan. We borrow the money to do the project, and anticipating 4 years later we'll start getting the money back from the state, and we pay down our loan. So the state lets us keep the money. Okay, like they grant us the money. We build infrastructure. We build something for a tenant. The tenant leases it back from us. We take that lease revenue and and we don't have to give it back to the state, you know. And so the state will pay. Ultimately, the state pays for the infrastructure improvement, and the port leases it to the tenant, but we don't have to give the money back to the state.
So you-
And it's a low lease. I mean, it's
Right.
it's beneficial to everybody.
Sure.
You know, and if we build the infrastructure, it's not taxable as far as ad valorem taxes because we're a public entity. If they build it, then they get taxed.
I got you.
So that's a savings for the tenant there, and we're trying to create jobs. I mean, we
Sure.
build a facility for somebody. They pay for it. I mean, they're not getting it for free, but they're paying it. They're paying it back on a very low interest over a long period of time, and we get, you know, they create jobs. And the parish benefits from the jobs.
Yeah, right, and having revenue of employment and
Exactly.
taxes and all those kind of things from that way. So what is happening in Washington? And we avoided a shutdown anyway.
Yeah,
right? So
that's what we heard.
for another 2 weeks. or
Well,
whatever.
it's 2 weeks, and there's two parts to it. And March 8th, one of them has to be renewed, and then March 22nd, the other one has to be renewed. So it's called continuing resolutions.
Right.
CR
I mean, it's
resol-
all- those are all temporary. They'll kick it down another 3 months. Or
Yeah, I mean, so usually it's a year, but this one was they were right at the brick wall. They had to do something, so they extended that. They lowered the brick wall a little bit, you know,
something.
and
The third time they've done it this
yeah.
year.
So yeah, we did avoid it again, you know. I mean, every year it's the same thing.
Homeland Security, is that part of the port? I know the ports were all involved with that. So the Mayorkas fella,
Well, Homeland Security, that's more of the migrants coming in and all that.
Right.
And, the Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was impeached by the House. Okay, so the House has to present it to the Senate. And the reason they waited, they usually do it right away, but it was because of that government shutdown that they had to clear.
I got you.
So in the near future, they're going to present it to the Senate. The Senate has a bunch of options, you know, but I don't know all the
Well, the
details.
Senate won't. They won't convict him.
Yeah, they don't think they will, but you know, it's just it's a principle thing, you know.
Mm-hmm. So what else are we looking for in Washington as far as what you guys are concerned with?
Well, so Mitch McConnell, who's the leader of the Senate on the Republican side, he just announced that he's stepping down in November, and he's been there since 2007. You know, we talked about Washington D.C. being the nursing home for all
Right.
these old people because there's a lot of old ones up there, you know. But he's stepping down. I mean, he's done a really good job. I mean, he's been up there for a long time, and it was time. And then today is Super Tuesday, okay, which is the Republican part of the election, you know, for the delegates, and it's gonna be interesting to see how Donald Trump and Nikki Haley fare out.
I think we know how that's going to end.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll have to see. And so,
few
and
other
then
factors
as to
involved.
whether or not she said she was staying in until
Right.
Super Tuesday to see what she does after. You know, if she decides to go to like an independent on one of them other parties, it could be
Oh, look,
interesting.
Ross
you know?
Perot changed an election
Exactly.
in 84, I guess it was.
So, the State of the Union address is this week,
92.
March 7th.
Yeah.
Biden's going to give a State of the Union address, so that'll be interesting. The Republican chairperson, Ronna McDaniel, she will step down March 8th. And Biden will present his fiscal year 25 budget. Should be out March 11th, and that affects our dredging because that's where we
Right.
get the money for the Corps to dredge. So that's going to be interesting to see how that fares out. You know, in the past 4 or 5 years, 6 years, we've done very well. We've got what we needed. You know, $5-6 million a year.
Oh, there's been a lot of money going around lately.
Before that, under the Obama administration, we'd be lucky if we got $1 million, and that's when we had to put in money. The parish had to put in money just to keep industry going.
Right.
You know, so hopefully we don't have to do that anymore.
Well, David, we sure appreciate the updates, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Harry.
All right, we'll be right back with more Going Public next time right here on HTV.